Hello everybody, what's up? It's Oakley, also known as Wolad, and today we are going to be talking about the book.
Don't mind me, I'm just here to say the name of the book because I didn't get it right in this video. So the name of the book is I'm Glad My Mom Died.
Written by Jennette McCurdy. So this book was published just last year in August in 2022, and I decided that I was kind of just gonna read the book. I was like, I have no idea what this book is about, so I just hopped into it and I read the book in a week and I just finished it yesterday. And so, you know what, I was like, I think I want to make a video about this. I want to talk about it. It has a lot of good points to prove, and the book made me cry a few times. And sometimes, I don't know, that just kind of goes to show that it's a good book if it can make me cry. So let's get into it. So some of the themes that show up in this book are mainly focused around the effects that a kind of not healthy childhood brings about in your life as you grow up. If you plan on reading the book and you don't want any spoilers, don't watch this video. Jennette is basically a survivor of emotional abuse. I would also say emotional neglect, growing up in a very negative home environment and constantly being manipulated by her mother, and literally just growing up in such a mindset, in such a place that really kind of forces you to end up how she ended up, and to end up basically torn and hurt with eating disorders, with low self-esteem, with codependency, with bitterness, with depression, with leaning on substances. That people are not born like that. We learn things from other people, we learn things from our environments. As we grow up, it really shapes us into the people that we become, and if we don't get out of bad habits that we were in as children and that we grow up in and that we normalize in our own heads, we may never escape them. And so that's why her book is phenomenal, because she is someone who has grown up in such a bad place and has been through so many things, but she had the courage to come out of it, to say, hey, I need to change. This needs to stop. I can't do this anymore. So, of course, there are other people in her life that kind of pushed her into that direction. Friend support, significant other support. And it's not only that, though, but if you want to change, you will change. You will try to change. You will change. It doesn't matter how much somebody else wants you to change. If you don't want to change, you won't change. And I know I keep reiterating my same point, but I just think it's awesome. I think she is such a strong individual and such an amazing person, and I really just want to, just put it out there that that this mainly is why that I really this is mainly why I really enjoyed her book. So one of the talking points that I want to talk about: pushing your failed dreams onto your children, usually of the same sex. So this happens a lot, but what happens to Jennette in this book that she talks about is that her mom pushes this dream of hers of being an actress. It's her failed dream that she couldn't accomplish in her lifetime. So she pushes it onto her daughter, and no matter all of the times that Jennette says that she doesn't want to do it and acts like she doesn't want to do it and shows interests in other things, her mom emotionally manipulates her into becoming an actress, and to becoming a child actress at that, which is ridiculous. And all of the things that she talks about in the book, it kind of just go to show, it's just putting a child in the spotlight, putting a child into fame, into this pool of Hollywood, of acting, especially when you don't want to do it, because when you're a kid, how do you know what you want to do? So another talking point is becoming best friends with your kids and having no life outside of them. This is what her mom does to her. We see it in the beginning of the book, and it's not mentioned until the end again, or towards the end when she's going to therapy. It's lightly brought up that her mom didn't really have any friends and put all of her time and all of her effort into Jennette. That basically Jennette did the same thing, because she was homeschooled. She spent all of her time with her mom. Her mom was a helicopter parent. Her mom was all over her all of the time, very controlling and very, very manipulative. So another thing is having children while you have an active eating disorder and pushing it onto them. Now, we don't know her mom's brain. We don't know if her mom had a daughter and had all these kids and was like, yeah, I am gonna push my ideas of disordered eating onto my daughter. We don't know that, but it's definitely something that if you have children and you also have an eating disorder, do you want your children to have the same eating disorder? You know, if they're around you all the time, if you're eating with them all the time, if you end up sharing your own opinions on like bodies and on food, it rubs off on your kids because your kids learn from you. And so she learned from her mom at a very young age. Jennette and her mom developed this really intense relationship and like friendship over disordered eating and over as she calls it, calorie restriction. I have a bunch of quotes that I wrote down, and so what I quote from Jennette at page 90 is something that will cement and validate our wonderful best friendship the way only secrets can. So this is when they're having a conversation. Jennette basically like brings up how she doesn't want to have boobs, and she's like Mom, how do I stop my boobs from coming in? And her mom is basically like, oh, let me tell you a secret. Her mom says, if you really want to learn how to stay small, there's this secret you can do called calorie restriction. Basically, they bond very intensely over counting and watching calories. And basically at the age of 11, there's this really intense progression and obsession taught to Jennette, which is approved and validated and extremely appreciated by her mom. And so it just becomes another way for them to be close together because now they both are doing calorie restriction. Because you can tell that her mom doesn't see a problem with it at all, which is really fucked up, to be honest. Like telling your 11-year-old daughter that she has to look small because she'll get more acting roles. Even before that, her mom is always like preening her up with makeup and like hair stuff and making her so aware of like her identity as like a woman or as a girl just to get acting roles and just to please like the actors, or not the actors but the people who like choose the actors and stuff like that. It's just like really, it's really weird. So the next thing I want to talk about is the unhealthy home environment where there's constant arguing between her parents, and she literally lives in a hoarder house where she describes basically in detail how like there's no space in the house and that the beds are literally filled with clutter, where they have to sleep on mats in the living rooms. She tells a story of she ends up getting this acting job. Her mom promises her that she can get a bunk bed, and so Jennette's really excited about it. They get the bunk bed. She wanted to sleep on the top, but she wasn't allowed, and so she slept on the bottom, and very soon after they got it, the top was filled with clutter already, because her mom would save like everything as like a memento. She kind of talked about it, but it was just like trash they would just keep. So the house would just constantly be filled with stuff. If someone would break a glass in the kitchen, they would put it in a bag and they would keep it. Like, it was insane, like how much they would hoard. I've seen hoarders' houses and stuff, and like it's a serious problem that people need help for, especially if you have kids. And it wasn't only that, but she was living with her grandparents too, and her brothers, her 3 brothers, her mom, her dad, but her dad would constantly get kicked out of the house because her mom and him were always fighting. It just sounds like a really, really bad home environment. And so of course, like, her mom being emotionally attached to Jennette, and then Jennette being emotionally attached to her mom because, hey, that's her mom. Alright, so another talking point I want to like talk about, mainly this is like before her mom dies. We're talking about her childhood, her life growing up, her being kind of like a teenager. But another thing I want to mention is like how Jennette had to make the money for her family. As a kid, as an actress getting these roles, her mom was giving a lot of money into it, but she knew that she was going to get a lot of money out of it. Jennette was going to constant dance lessons like 5 times a week or something, or maybe I think it was 10 times a week actually. She was going to dance lessons, and she had acting lessons, and she was homeschooled, so there was like some of that she would do at home, but she was always out doing something because that's what her mom wanted her to do. And so when she would get these roles, when she would get these acting roles, it started off when she was younger. She would get small scenes as background characters in different shows, but as she got these roles, she would get paid for them. She ended up having to make the money for her family because her family was broke. Her dad wouldn't make enough money. I don't think her mom even worked. Her grandparents or her grandpa worked. Her whole family was financially dependent on her from a really young age. And basically, like, another thing is that her mom would constantly use cancer, like her cancer story, as a way to get special treatment and to get sympathy, especially from her family. They would constantly have to watch this VHS tape of her mom, like, recovering from cancer. I forget exactly what it was exactly, but it was, like, weird and dark, and they had to watch it like once a week because her mom just like forced her and her siblings to watch it. Yeah, it was really weird. She would just end up doing anything to please her mom. And there's this one time that they're driving in a car together, coming back from one of her acting jobs or something. There's this one scene she has to prepare for where she basically has to throw a tantrum. She's practicing with her mom because her mom forces her to practice at the house, and so she's rolling around on the floor and she's screaming and she's thrashing around. Her mom tells her, like, how great it was. She's like, wow, like, you did awesome. Like, but what her mom didn't know was that, like, as she says, I know better than to tell Mom that I got my character inspiration from her erratic and violent behavior. So there's also this other scene with that same scene that she was practicing for a show, where when she was on stage doing it, for like the directors who were choosing actors or something, I forget what they're called, but she was up there doing it, and everyone was like baffled at how an amazing performance it was. It was an audition. She just talked about how, like, she felt like she could finally, like, let it all go because she was screaming and she was crying and it was real. Like, it was basically, like, real to her and to everyone else. She was, like, acting. And I thought that was, like, that was intense. And so this one time when her and her mom were driving back, I think from either an audition or her doing a show, she says to her mom that she doesn't want to act anymore. That she's like, I don't know if I want to act anymore. And her mom switches like that and basically starts crying hysterically and, like, beating the wheel of the car as they're driving. And meanwhile, Jennette was sitting in the back in a car seat because she had to sit in a car seat until she was like 16 or something, just because her mom, I don't know, her mom had this, like, full-blown tantrum in the car, and then Jennette was like, never mind. And her mom stopped and went on to, like, continue, like, singing along to a song and then pretending like nothing happened. And so she says, I'm not the only one who can cry on cue. That's on page 80. Her mom has to keep going to, like, treatment for her cancer. One of the projects that Jennette is working on is a screenplay, so she writes, like, this whole screenplay it was for something, like, relating to her acting and stuff. And she was really proud of it, and she shows her mom it, and her mom is basically, like, kind of upset about it. She doesn't like that she's writing instead of putting all of her attention and all of her life into acting like her mom wants her to do. Her mom doesn't support her writing and her screenplay, and she says, I hope you don't like writing more than acting. And Jennette says, in her book, not to her mom, but she says, I'm embarrassed I gave my mom my screenplay. How could I be so stupid? She would never support something like this. So one of the things that Jennette talks about as she's a kid is that she really enjoys going to church, and she talks about, she's Mormon, she grew up Mormon, how going to church was basically like her safe haven because she would get out of her disgusting house and she would just be able to, like, be in a place with nice people and a nice atmosphere. And so as her acting career basically continues as a child, it's so weird to say career, but that's basically what it is. As her acting career continues, they get so busy that her mom just basically stops bringing her to church, and they fall off of it, which was really sad because she really didn't want it to happen, and it happened. She continues to get older. She's an older teen. She's, I think, yeah, she's just getting older. I think she's around like 18 or so. And she's still working with Nickelodeon. She's still on iCarly. And she is basically Trip to Maui at the Four Seasons. And she's allowed to bring whoever like she wants, basically. So she brings this guy that she's been with, whose name is Joe. And he's basically 30 and she's like 18. And they had been like kind of seeing each other for a while, so they go together and they're like having fun or like paddleboarding, doing something outside, and the paparazzi take photos of them. And so she starts freaking out because basically she was lying to her mom, because meanwhile her mom has to call her 5 to 10 times a day or so and see what she's doing all the time. She lies to her mom that she's there with her gay, like, best friend, but meanwhile she's with this guy that she's kind of been seeing and who she also kind of works with. And so the paparazzi get it, and obviously they post it, they sell it, and it's online. And so after Jennette freaks out, when she takes a nap, she wakes up to her phone being berated by her mom. It's just so intense, all of the things that her mom say to her, basically disowning her, calling her disgusting, horrible, mean things. And just to quote some of what her mom says, she says, "You're eating your guilt." She calls her an ugly monster and says that she and her brothers are going to disown her. She also says that you caused my cancer to come back. So all of this is basically like in an email from her mom.